Welcome back. Battered and bruised, yes, but Irma was no match for the Suncoast. We're licking our wounds, picking up the fallen trees and branches over 100 traffic lights. We're out this afternoon, fewer now. 60% of Sarasota County is in the dark, 55% of Manatee County is without power, and FLP says in some cases it may be out for days to weeks. No school tomorrow in both Sarasota and Manatee counties, but slowly stores and restaurants are beginning to reopen. And joining us for more is ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan, Sarasota Police Lieutenant Dimitri Konstantinopoulos, and Major Chuck Whitten of the Salvation Army. Did I get that right, Lieutenant?
You did.
I'm very proud of myself. Bob, let me start with you because you and I have been talking about these storm tracks for over a week now. In the final analysis, what surprised you the most?
Well, what surprised me the most, basically, is how intense this storm was and how much it became a widespread storm event. Typically, they don't get that big, and for me to see a storm at 185 mile an hour for sustained wind, 185 for a sustained wind, not over us, but over the northern Leeward Islands, and with 225 mile an hour winds, gusts, I had a hard time even saying that because I just couldn't believe how intense that storm was, and it stayed that way for a record. No other storm, a cyclone, tropical cyclone, and that means cyclones and typhoons, has ever been that strong across the globe. So just a very intense hurricane. And each hurricane that I've covered all have a unique personality, just like we saw with Charlie, with Andrew, again, with many other storms. So this one is one for the record books, and hopefully we won't see another one like this for another 100 years, you know.
I hope not. Major, the one question I had for you, and the reason why we had you on, is when I was heading out of the station Saturday night after 8 o'clock, I saw a number of homeless people at gas stations in my travels in our area here, and I wondered what happened to them. I'm wondering if any of them braved the elements, or were we able to get most of them into shelter?
I believe so, and there was a very concerted effort by the city and the county to sort of educate and resource folks towards hurricane shelters. There were a few that lingered on into Saturday evening, probably well past an advisable time. But my team had told me they encountered police who had given lifts to people to shelters, and in the waning hours of Sunday when everything was upon us, there were just a few that came in to us as a shelter of last resort. So I believe for the most part we were able to accommodate everyone and get them to safety.
Ordinarily, your police officers have a tough job when it comes to the homeless in our area in bad weather. You can't force a person to do something, but what was the strategy over the weekend to get these folks off the street?
Well, I think, like the Major said, education was huge. Getting out there, letting them know what the potential was, what the risk factors were, and really encouraging them to let us take them to the appropriate places.
We're going to get more into this in the next half hour, but quickly, what is the biggest problem that the police department has at this hour?
You know, right now, I'd first like to say that, truly after everything that you said, Bob, we're certainly blessed because it could have been a lot worse. And really much of our the things that we're looking into and taking care of are cosmetic and can be fixed. So really we're dealing with some lines that are down, some intersections that don't have lights operable, and we have quite a few trees that are still blocking the roads, but the city departments are working hard to get those squared away.
I know when I talked to the chief on Friday night, she was concerned about the possibility of looting. Down south in other parts of the state, there were some arrests, a couple up in Polk County as well. Did you have much of a problem with that here? I'm happy
to say that we didn't have any problem with that. I think it's a credit to our community. Truly, everybody has come together, had a great approach to this, and we haven't had any reported looting at all.
All right, very good. We are just getting warmed up. We'll have much more on the recovery from Irma right after we check the first alert weather. Stay with us. Irma was tough, but the Suncoast is tougher. Joining us for more is ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan, Sarasota Police Lieutenant Dimitri Konstantinopoulos, and Major Chuck Whitten of the Salvation Army. Did I say it all right that time?
You did.
Okay.
Twice? No, that's good.
Lieutenant, the big question that I had for you is the number of traffic lights that are out still in Sarasota County. You said earlier it's down to about 60 in our area right now?
Actually, as of about an hour ago, it was down to 24 in the city that were inoperable.
Now, Erica did a great interview with a state trooper in terms of what to do when you get to a light that does not have a working signal. I think it's important enough information that we repeat it, because I don't think a lot of people know what to do in terms of watching the traffic coming in the opposite direction or coming from 90 degrees. Just remind people what you should do. No,
it's a very important topic. If a driver comes upon an intersection with the lights down, they should treat it as a four-way stop. Be patient. Make sure you use due care. Everybody's in the same boat here, and just show a lot of patience.
Patience is not something we're always good at,
well,
and you can't have an officer at every unworking signal to tell drivers what to do.
No, we can't. But we're all in this together. We have to remember that it could have been a lot worse, and show that care and patience.
Okay. And Major, as we were talking about earlier, I'm just fascinated by whether the homeless people who there are a lot of them in our city, unfortunately, whether they got off the street. What was the strategy in terms of where to go, and what's going on at the Salvation Army right now? How many people are you taking care of?
Okay. Well, tonight we served 240 for dinner, and we anticipate most of those will stay the night. So our capacity is 250. So we really are heavy at capacity near it tonight if we don't.
On a normal night, how many do you feed?
180. So significantly more tonight.
What kind of attitude did you pick up from folks in terms of some of whom are very independent? They want to do what they want to do, but what we saw over the last 24 hours was nothing to play around with in terms of seeking shelter.
I think for the most part, once they could grasp, just as Lieutenant mentioned earlier, just the danger of loss of life, it was enough to convince most of them to take advantage of the resources, the free buses, police transportation, whatever means to get to a shelter. The EOC was very deliberate in their communication about the availability, come as you are, pets, just whatever, and just trying to accommodate everyone to be safe for the, and I think making that easy to access was very helpful to that population.
And Lieutenant, how are your colleagues and your men and women doing right now? Because talking to the chief beforehand, this was all, everyone on deck. And you were out there last night, and you went out on the road as soon as it was safe to do so.
Yeah, our personnel were spectacular. They truly were. They worked day and night, went without sleep, went without food, were very selfless, while at the same time trying to make the community safe. Many had their families on their minds, and they were worried about their families. But that's what we do. When we pin that badge on, we know that there are going to be events like this, and it brings everybody together. There was a sense of unity this weekend during the storm, and as a Sarasota police officer, I couldn't have been more proud to witness these officers and civilian personnel as well going out and doing what they do best. And many of them slept on the floor. They were at these shelters for the entirety, the 3 days, and they're tired, but we're moving along, and we'll continue to do so.
Was it as bad as you expected it to be?
No. As far as what
in terms of the weather conditions when you would peek your head out.
I think we were truly blessed. We were spared in this because this started out as a Category 5 and decreased, and when we were able to get out last night after the sustained winds subsided, we didn't know what to expect, and personally, just knowing that there was trees down, just some cosmetic superficial damage, like I said, it could have been a lot worse.
It brings me to the question I really have been wanting to ask you, Bob, and we have a lot of viewer questions that I want to get to as well, but you and I have been talking about these computer models for over a week now. I think what we've seen here are the limitations of our technology.
Yes, there are limitations. It's getting better and better in terms of where the storm is going to be in 3 days. In fact, the error rate for a 3-day forecast is now where the 5-day forecast used to be. I should say the 3-day forecast is now where the 5-day forecast error rate is about 15 years ago. So it's getting a lot better. So what I'm saying is with technology and bigger computers and processing speeds and more data coming into the system, we're getting a better idea as to where the storm goes. But we cannot map out yet the subtleties of the upper levels of the atmosphere.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because you and I were talking earlier that there are certain things that the technology cannot pick up in the atmosphere, which basically help push the storm where it goes.
And it's like the old chaos theory. If a butterfly flaps its wings in Texas, it changes the weather in Florida. You know, there's little things that can happen that can create big things, doing big things down the road. And this was a little trough of low pressure that actually was to develop over the lower Mississippi Valley, and the high pressure to the north of it, which was driving the system, was a little stronger than the models had projected. And so it went on a little different course. And all the models handle things a little differently. And I must say, I gotta say kudos to the first responders, the police officers, and also the firefighters, the paramedics, and on top of that, the EOC chiefs, Sherilyn Burris and Ed McCrane, too. I don't want to leave them out, but they did a great job, too, informing the public and letting them know what was going to go on and possibly happen.
All right, let's ask a couple of questions here. Let's see if we have some answers, and I'll ask you two at one time. Lisa wants to know whether the eye of the storm actually passed over Sarasota County.
Sarasota County, no. It was actually into DeSoto County, and then into Hardy County, and then into Polk County, and a little bit of Hillsborough as well. So the eye got a little larger as it was moving in, but the center of the storm, if you will, let's call it the center of the storm, made its way through those counties. I mentioned the interior county, so it did not pass into Sarasota.
And I also know that you did get to this, but let's ask it again. Kimberly wants to know, how high did the wind speed get?
Well, the wind gusts here, the strongest one was in the Anna Maria Island area at 92-mile-an-hour wind gusts. There were no reports so far of any hurricane force sustained winds, okay? So there was no constant wind at above 74 miles an hour. There wasn't any of that. And the strongest wind gusts, for example, at the Venice Airport and the Venice Pier, I think was up at 82 miles an hour. And those are fairly significant. They do just exactly what happened. They down trees, power lines, and they rip out awnings. And so it was pretty standard stuff with the wind speed that we saw.
All right, we're going to come back for final thoughts in just a moment. But first, we want to show you some footage that we are getting right now of a fire around the corner from our studio. We are being told that there are 3 to 10 20-foot boats on fire. The fire is out now, and the investigation is now getting underway, and we'll have more on the story coming up tonight at 11 o'clock. We have to take a quick break, and we'll have final thoughts when we return, so stay with us. Our guest joining us right now for final thoughts about Hurricane Irma. You know, Lieutenant, we're not quite out of the woods yet. We have to have a lot of patience over the next few days. What is the one thing you want our viewers to know in terms of your perspective?
You know, the city and the police department, we're doing everything we can to make sure that people can obtain normalcy in their lives again. None of our resources have been affected. Everything's been allocated to try to get everybody back to their normal lives. We'll continue to be out there patrolling the neighborhoods, offering assistance to whoever needs it in any capacity, any way, shape, or form we can do that. And certainly they can call on us. And if we don't have the answers, we'll direct them to the proper places.
Just be patient.
And be patient. You have to be patient.
Major, I would imagine that this was a real test of not only of the capacity of the Salvation Army, but also the core of your mission.
Yes, and I'm glad to say that with the staff, the volunteers, the resources communities afforded us, we were able to meet needs, and we are committed to continue to do that. And we're just happy to be a part of people who want to make a better life for themselves, and we hope to continue to do that. They've got a lot of storms going on in their life every day that they're overcoming.
You know, Bob, and finally, and you have said this before, we are not at the end of hurricane season now, and whether the odds would be there that we would receive another major storm, we're in unusual times. After all, we've had 4 Category hurricanes within 16 days of each other?
Yeah, pretty amazing. And Harvey being the most rain-producing hurricane ever in the United States history. One thing I'd like to tell people to take out of this is that, you know, we've learned a lot of lessons on how to prepare for a hurricane, but we don't really teach a lot about after hurricane. We still have potential dangers here that will continue on for the next week. People will be using chainsaws, they'll be up on their roofs, they'll be fixing things, they'll be exerting themselves a little bit too much in the heat. And what's the Hurricane Center is finding out, and some of the emergency management officials are saying that more people are getting hurt after the hurricane moves through. So be careful out there.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much. FYI, you can watch past discussions. They're on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan, Sarasota Police Lieutenant Dimitri Konstantinopoulos, and Major Chuck Witten of the Salvation Army.